Good afternoon, peoples. Happy Saturday, happy weekend. All right. So you probably saw my latest video, looked at the Russell 2000 and looked at the S&P 500 and compared within those sectors which fund families and specific ETFs perform the best. Again, quick summary. I take total return. So let's go through, and then what's that made up of? Since these funds have 102 days, I picked that time frame because some of the funds only go back to that time frame. I think what I'm going to do in addition is not only do and you have to compare apples to apples. If I go in and I look at a year on a round hill fund and a new fund comes out for 2 months and I say, hey, it's outperforming, it's not really comparing the same time frame in the markets. And we all know the markets go up and down. February, which I'm using, tended to be a very high point in most of the indexes or all of the indexes. And we're not passing those levels. So a lot of stocks and indexes and funds that are made up of stocks have a hard time doing better. So normally in a very bullish market, you would see all of these gain and loss numbers greater. So when you have just within this 102 period, you have a loss on almost everything. The actual NASDAQ 100. Sometimes these funds are a little bit, subsets. They may be a pick of the QQQ. Some of them, they focus on just the NASDAQ 100, but they're all NASDAQ, high tech, generally speaking, oriented. If they don't produce any income at all, I don't really cover them because they wouldn't make it in the total return typically. But it's kind of, whoops, this one came back in here, guys. I had deleted this because it's not really made up of, long story, it's not made up of, it's a bunch of, it's actually a good fund, Feet and 5e from Yield Max, but the idea behind those funds is it uses a subset. It's got a beat, it's got their, and it uses all their funds for the most part. And it's an interesting philosophy, not a bad fund, but it doesn't belong in this data set. But I plugged it in while I was reading about it again and then saw. And then what happens is the command, well, you don't care. I'm going to skip that. It's a technical issue that I have. All right. So, in looking at these guys, let's jump in and I finish on how I actually analyze them. So, I do it on total return. What's total return made up of? Well, it's made up of the gain and loss, this column, over the period of time. And then I use a formula to annualize that. Somebody made a comment, you shouldn't analyze 1 month, that's a future projection, yada, yada, yada. That's why I show you both, but it's not 1 month, it's 102 days. So it's reasonable, okay, to do that. But you have both categories here. Should somebody go out and say, well, look, who did the best on gain or loss? Well, the underlying NASDAQ 100 index did the best. The second best would be GPIQ. Okay, GPIQ took second place. I summarized down here. I mean, I can sort by total return and you have your winners, but I thought in this instance I would show you. And then you see the components. So take a look at GPIQ in second place. Its yield was it was the third best out of the three funds. And again, I can sort on just yield. Okay, but this is a annualized yield. But we also have, this is non-annualized, right? So if you go look at, let's take QQQI, Niels, who won? Okay. So in the actual 102 days, they had a 3.38, which was not the highest. You had many 7%ers. You had four funds produce higher distribution, but they all had much greater losses down here. And then when the annualized, so basically annualized is just projecting out what you did in 102 days to 365 days. It's really a standard thing that statisticians and industry-wise utilizes. Okay. And they utilize it more when it shows favorable results than if it shows non-favorable results, right? And so you see all kinds of numbers there, but I just wanted to show you that they're all done properly and all the data is there. So if you think something is a better fund, by all means, go buy that fund. I mean, look at Defiance, classic here. Look at the yield. Okay, the yield is based on their cost at inception, right? So Defiance has two funds in here, ironically, and they have what is known as a um, targeted fund, which is more conservative, has less NAV loss. That actually, in this scenario, let's move over slightly so you can see total return. And let me just go out and sort by total return. Okay. So here's the NASDAQ index. We don't count that because it doesn't pay income. People want income, and most of my viewers want income. So NEOS, okay, why did this change here? Let me see. Oh, when I sort, it uses the old field. Interesting. I'm going to have to fix that. I had it in a certain order. Let's see. And now it's grabbing the wrong field. Okay, let me undo that one. I'll figure out how to fix that. Okay. So now at least it has the right data. You look over here and then unsorted from, top to bottom, because I don't have that many, and you see 4.3. What did it actually yield? Well, how does it get to that? It yielded 1210. Okay, its actual yield just on the 102 days was 3.38. And they all used the same multiplier because I'm comparing them all on the same date. So with a yield of 1210 and a NAV projected out loss of 772 and only losing in the 102 days 2.24. Okay. So it did the best, and that's why, to me, total return's important. Okay. But I give you all the underlying data should you want. And then for somebody that says, hey, I want Defiance, man, they pay out like crazy. They did 40.71 annualized. Even in the time frame, they paid out the actual 1138. Okay. The next highest were Yield Max with their QDTY at 786 and 7.96. Now, there's some slight nuances that help some of these funds. A lot of it has to do with timing. I pick a launch date. And I call it, the launch. It's not the actual launch for most of the funds. It usually is for one of the lower base funds, right? Or one of the newer funds. Therefore, if I'm going to compare them, it's not fair to take a year and a half on all these guys that have been around for a long time and then 2 months, which I mentioned earlier. So I'm doing the best logical apples to apples comparison. There are some slight advantages once in a while. I never allow a fund over here. When I look at their distributions, I say I never allow. I don't plug it in. So if a fund starts on February 26th and they happen and other funds pay on the 27th, I don't take that distribution. And if it's a monthly, it's big. Sometimes if they do a weekly and it's within 3 or 4 days of that, somebody else, I'll allow that weekly because it's 20 cents or something. It's not a big deal. So over here is where I collect, whoops, where oh yeah, sorry. So I call it, these dates don't matter. At one point they, and the 5th tends to be a popular weekly date that some of the funds pay on. So on the weeklies, I come in, if I produce this for you every week, then you'll see an added number. So the weeklies have an advantage that the monthlies don't, and they accumulate a little more along the way. And I know a lot of you love that. So I color code over here. If you see the orange yellow, that is a weekly payer. I could have another field, but then you end up with a million fields to show everything when I can do it logically. So whites are monthly payers, and this is not a payer at all. So let's give it like a blue color. Um, So you've got orange and you've got white. Whites being monthly pairs, and once in a while somebody will pop in like on my SPY and Russell, and they only pay quarterly. So then I color code that different, and that's kind of my limit. If they pay annual, somebody, oh Bruce, the NDX pays 0.014%, and they pay an annual. I'm not going to bother with that. Okay, so that's why. But I do show them because technically their total return was the best. So these income funds are income funds for a reason. People buy them because they want income. So that's why I find this one fascinating. And Defiance is known for that. And it's interesting that their QQQ, I'm only taking the top three, their QQQT came in very close to this 2.81. It came in at 2.71. But look here, where this one pays 40, it pays 22. And then it lost 19. Okay, so it even had NAV erosion, right? But it sustained itself better. So some of you probably thought that this guy might win, right? JEPQ didn't perform that well in this particular setup, right? And what I mentioned at the beginning, and let me know in the comments, what I can do is ignore a couple of the newbies and do this. I'm always going to do this. And then maybe down below, I take the guys that have been around a year and I give you a year, right? That way we don't even have to annualize, dividends and NAVs, and I just show you the main group. I think it's additional information that's useful, but I would be remiss if I didn't show you the new guys that come along and do pretty well. All right, guys, that's what I got. Don't want to belabor this. I got a lot of things to get out. I got to get out my yield max estimates. I think for Group A, I've done some work on that. I've got more to do. I need to get these comparisons out. As you've mentioned, I've already done a comparison on MSTR, but I need to update that. Okay, then I need to do a BTC one. Then people have asked for Palantir. I have the basis of that. Another one that I have the data but I haven't put the video out is Tesla. There are a lot of high yield income funds around having the underlying of Tesla. Okay, guys, this is Bruce with Targeted Wealth Creation. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Have a great rest of your weekend and look for a lot more videos coming from me. Okay, bye for now.